welcome back to the Bodyful Minds Podcast. I'm still very much in January mode. And for me, that means easing back into routines, including changing a few things in my own movement practice. Now, you might be wondering if I finally succumbed to January pressure, especially after everything I shared in the last episode. But no, that's not what's happening here. The difference is how I'm approaching it. I'm not trying to become a new person. I'm not forcing intensity or discipline. I'm simply advancing my movement practice in a way that feels aligned with where my body is right now. And I would have done that regardless of whether it's January, July, or November. And that distinction matters because January often carries something quieter underneath all the good intentions. The idea that moving your body is proof of commitment, proof that you're taking things seriously again, proof that you're back on track. And especially for ambitious mums, that pressure can slip in almost unnoticed, reinforced by constant messages about how female bodies are supposed to look, move, and perform. Movement becomes another place where worth gets measured. Another place where output equals value. Today, I want to gently interrupt that idea and offer you a different way of relating to movement altogether. Most of us didn't learn movement or exercise as a conversation. We learned it as compliance. When you start a sport, there are rules. When you get better, the focus is on improvement, faster, stronger, more. Even earlier than that, many of us learned that bodies need to be controlled. Young children often move instinctively in ways that don't always fit neatly into schedules or systems. By school age at the latest, that kind of movement is often labeled disruptive. So we're taught very early on to sit still, to hold it together, to control our bodies. And sooner is often framed as better. Think potty training, think sitting still, think good behaviour. And over time, movement becomes something that counts only when it's formalized, when it's on the schedule, when it looks disciplined. Add to that the experience for some of us being told early on that they are not sporty or not good at exercise or not good at specific types of sports. And suddenly movement feels either obligatory or pointless. All of this is subtle and yet incredibly powerful. Because when movement or success in it becomes proof of worth, listening becomes optional. And ignoring your body becomes normal. So what if movement wasn't tied to performance at all? What if movement was a dialogue? Your nervous system is always responding to pace, pressure, expectation, safety. Even when you're not listening, your body is still answering. That's why the same movement can feel grounding one day and completely draining the next. Not because your body is unreliable, but because it's responsive. Movement doesn't reconnect you by default. How you move and how you listen matters far more than frequency or intensity. And this is where everyday movement is often deeply underestimated. I touched on this in the previous episode, but I want to go a step further here. Beyond the health myths that are so deeply ingrained in our culture, movement doesn't only happen in workouts. It can look like walking or cycling while thinking, pacing during a phone call, stretching between meetings, standing up, shaking out tension, stepping outside for 2 minutes. These are not lesser forms of movement. They can be deeply regulating. They can spark creativity, the kind that helps you finally solve the problem you've been ruminating on. And in times when the world feels heavy, when news cycles are worrying or outright scary, movement can also help process fear and release some of that constant low-level tension many of us carry. So the difference isn't whether movement is planned or spontaneous. It's whether it's chosen with awareness. A simple shift can change everything. What supports me today for tomorrow? That question turns movement into a relationship with yourself, not an obligation. Here's a very simple practice you can try this week. Before you move or exercise, pause for a moment and check in. How are you feeling right now? anxious or tense, disconnected or unmotivated, excited and energized? Then after the movement, however big or small, pause again and ask, what shifted, physically, emotionally, or mentally? No judging the answer, no fixing it, just noticing. That single question begins to rebuild trust between you and your body. It begins to show you what exercise and movement can mean beyond self-optimization and the worthiness debate. Movement doesn't have to be about becoming better, stronger, or more disciplined. And it certainly won't solve the world's problems or all of yours. But when done intentionally, it can be about reconnection, about staying in dialogue, about learning to hear yourself again, especially in busy seasons. It can also open new perspectives and spark creativity. And that kind of movement doesn't demand more effort. It asks for more presence. Presence to know when to recover and when to challenge. This week, I invite you to stay curious. Notice just one moment where movement changes how you feel, not how you look. And let that be enough. Until next time, more you, less noise.